Building a brand today is actually easier. And how I say this is we have the technology to help create the marketing side of it quicker, faster, relevant. So I think that's probably the shortest answer and easiest answer to that. I think that's today easier than it was at least a decade ago, right? You're not knocking on everyone's door and trying to say, hey, I'm, Jocelyn Garrett and here's my album. And it's different, right? We have AI, we have other tools. I think when it came to the brand, you really have to understand your value prop. And for me, it was I wanted to impact people through my words and my music, and I wanted that to be a ripple effect in a positive way. And I was going to stick to that character, that value, that is my brand. So anything that I did, I lived, breathed, and whoever I met acted in that way.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again to another episode of the Alex Hayes Podcast. I am your host, Alex Hayes. With me today is a super special guest, Jocelyn Garrett. I've been really excited to get this interview on because she has such a unique take on entrepreneurship. She spent a long time as a professional artist, as a singer, songwriter, performer. She's been on applications for The Voice and for American Idol. She spent a long time in medical sales professional, and she's currently director of partnerships at Propel, helping small business owners overcome challenges that they face every day. So I'm super excited about this episode. Jocelyn, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Wow. Thank you, Alex, for that introduction. That was great. I'm super blessed, excited to be here, and just really grateful that you asked me to be a part of the show. It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. This is the itch that I've been looking to scratch, is talk to me about what it's like to be a contestant on these major The Voice and American Idol, with these major platforms that you see so many people going through. Talk to us about your experience.
That's such a good question. I'll kind of go really far back to move kind of forward. Because when I was super young, a way that helped me learn was through music. So by the age of 4, I was singing and I was writing songs in order to learn. And so from a young age, I was that person that had the hairbrush and it was ready in front of my stuffed animals to perform, right? Fast forward to when I was 13, I tried out for plays. I got into choir on top of the sports that I was a part of on the side. I was really blessed that my parents allowed me to meet with a songwriter within the county that I lived at the time, which was Medina, Ohio, about 40 miles outside of Cleveland. And so she kind of taught me how to put my words and my voice together. And then by the age of 13, I put out a CD of 5 songs that I wrote at 13, just sold it locally to my community. But from there, I realized at a really young age that the talent was there. It was the effort and the performance aspect of it. So when I was 16, the American Idol at the time was you had to go to city and camp out. So I believe I was 16 at the time, and I could have been 17. I don't exactly remember. But we went to Kansas City. That was the closest one. And we had to camp out for 3 nights there just to get a seat at the forefront. Didn't make it far in the American Idol experience, but learned really quick that you needed about 20 seconds to get to the next step. So then fast forward to The Voice. I was 20 at the time, and me and my 2 girlfriends from my sorority in college traveled to Nashville because I made it past the rounds within Chicago. And that was where I met, learned, and went through the process of making sure that you stood out in the first 20 to 30 seconds. You had stage presence, you had your voice, but also you had to pick the right song that made you stand out. And then you just made connections from there. So it became more of a business aspect to making sure you remembered each person you met, because you never know who you're going to run into.
That is so powerful because that's so relevant today. How do you stand out in the crowd in social media? How do you stand out in the crowd when you go networking? How do you make yourself memorable? What were some of the things that you learned on how to make yourself stand out?
I think it was allowing and accepting that I wasn't moving forward. And when I asked why, they were looking for someone to fit a certain genre and box. And so they said, don't change who you are. You just weren't what we were looking for in this spot. Because during The Voice, it's spots that you have to take within certain genres and all that. And I just didn't fit in that box at the time. So instead of getting down and trying to change whether it was genre that I wanted to be in, whether it was changing my voice to fit a certain way, I really just stuck to my guns. But going back to your point on the networking piece, I met someone from The Voice that was a producer in the back, and he made a call to Justin James at the time, who was a producer at an independent label called Artists at the Industry at the time. Now, this was back in oh gosh, maybe 2016, 2017. And it just so happened Justin, James, and I actually met when I was super young singing on the beach at North Ave, remembered me. He knew someone from The Voice. He got me in the studio, and then that's kind of how it began, the starting process of putting my first album together.
That's awesome. Even though you swung and took a shot at The Voice, at the original path wasn't the path that you were going to go on. You actually, because you showed up though, you had more opportunity to show up and you were ready to go down those other roads.
Yeah, and I think if there's a piece of advice to the audience listening, it was every person you meet, you impact. So make sure it's a character that you portray, like who you are, right? I would not have gotten the call to someone in Chicago if that producer didn't think I was memorable or wanted to see me succeed because of who I was and that impact I made from the initial first time meeting them. So I think just like business, right? Uh, who you put the best foot forward and who you are and being authentic and genuine, right? Um, that goes such a long way. And if you can shut out the noise of everything else and people telling you what you should be, and you really hone into who you are, those things start manifesting towards you versus you trying to expand and reach out towards it.
Yeah, I can empathize with that point for sure. Like for a little while, I was trying to put forth a different front for myself, and it didn't feel authentic. And I think a lot of people felt that. And our latest avenue forward feels a lot more authentic. Like we're writing a book called "The Run a Tight Ship," and it's about using best practices for merchant mariners to build a sustainable company that's mature. And that just feels like a right fit for me. But it took me so long to try to figure that out. Right. So
Sure.
I agree with that search. Like there's real pressure to be somebody that you're not because you see all these other people on social media being successful because they're loud and you're like, well, I can do that. I'm just going to copy that person. I'm going to copy that person. It's like, well, you can't never copy somebody exactly because they're really looking to build a relationship with a person.
Sure.
How
Yep.
did you go from the stage and say no, I'm not going to be somebody that I'm not because that I think is really important. I don't want to just gloss over that.
Yeah, so I think that's a twofold question, right? I knew who I was really early on. Um, and I wasn't gonna waver on that. So I knew also too that songwriting and singing was a part of my purpose. So with that being said, it was actually easier for me to make choices and decisions. I think the hardest thing for me at that time since I was young was hearing from different people we can make you look like this, or should I do a photo shoot for this? Or you're just pulled in different directions. And because you're so young and you don't know anything about the business or industry at the time, I mean, I just maybe turned 21 at this time, right? I didn't even put out my album until I was, what, 26 is when my first hit came out. But I was already working in the industry, learning and observing. So to answer your question, I knew really young who I was, and this was part of my purpose. I think it just came down to I met the right people that I chose to work with that valued who I was, where I wanted to go, and I was making that decision and they were coming with me. I wasn't going to go with someone based on what their idea of me was.
All of that. And now that when you got into the music industry, what were some of those things that shocked you when you got into there? Like, what were some of those big
Yeah.
moments of, oh, this is how it works?
It's a business, and like anything, it's ran being really naive and ignorant at the time, which ignorance is bliss in some areas. So I'm really grateful for that time. I would have to say I thought that my passion would lead me into the business, but I had to learn that passion is great to have, just like motivation. You don't need motivation to go to the gym every day. You need discipline. I had to categorize and compartmentalize that my passion for music still has the same impact, but it changed to like this is now a business, and so that hat had to come on as well. And I think the thing that shocked me the most was after my first album, it wasn't underneath my label at the time. It was underneath the Artist of Industry, although I did publish all my songs under BMI, so I did get those rights. But I got no royalties, no money, and I wrote every song on that album. Now, until you go through that, you don't learn how much it costs for revenue streams and where you download, like downloading the rights on, Amazon and Apple, iTunes, Spotify, all those big players, right? I had to learn after my first album how to make a business out of it, and that's where the second album became more of the business side of myself, not just the artistry of myself.
That's interesting. So the
Big
so what,
moment too.
yeah, big moment for sure. So the initial lessons that you had to learn were cash flow, right? How do you actually make cash flow? What was different on the second album? Like, how did you structure things differently the second album than you did the first one that made such that different, that made it a business?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's so relevant full circle now that I think about it, what I do today. The marketing, so that growth side, I had to learn how to market myself as a brand. I had to learn how to hit a certain revenue target in order to become profitable. And so the marketing piece and the dollars used for, let's say, a music video costs X amount, right? I needed a certain amount of either views, streams, or downloads from certain other platforms from that music video, or at least from YouTube, in order to gain a certain amount of profit back. Reinvest that into things that would go into the album on the marketing side. So it was a complete change from where I was just like, music, music, music on my first album. Oh, I'm going to put this out. And you're going to think, like, oh, I'm going to make it so big. And that just wasn't the case. And at my first album, I mean, I had a release party. I went locally. I mean, I would sing wherever I went, and it just didn't pay off as far as like I couldn't live that way. So I had to make the changes if I wanted to keep pursuing this. And so, yeah, the marketing shift and putting the hat on, I think, was the biggest change for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying that story and it resonates with me. I last fall, I put on this huge live event. I spent thousands of dollars to put on this huge live event in the exit succession space. It was a huge success. Everybody said it was so much value. How much money did I make? Zero. It was a great time. Let me tell you, it was such a great experience though, because we learned stage production, we learned sequencing and customer relations, like marketing. We networked our butts off. Like we went through exactly what you were just talking about. We did all of that same thing and then still made no money. So we've been there. I've got that t-shirt.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
So, but yeah, and it helps you think about, okay, what went well, what do you do well, and what needs to change. And I like how you're saying that the progression of, you saw how all your efforts were building and you did something great. You actually produced real value, but now you need a way to monetize that value in a way that sustains your business. So great lessons here. Great lessons.
Yeah,
The
and I do wanna add to that because I don't wanna leave other people out. I also had to realize that in order to make my second album, not only monetize it, but was to become an orchestrator as well. I didn't have to be the person that's, in charge of just the finances. I didn't have to be the person that was in charge of the marketing. I was orchestrating and finding right people to help put the pieces together to help my brand expand. So there were other people involved that I did want to be a part of this and hire on. Still to this day, I have so much love for all the people that worked underneath me at the time. But that was a big learning lesson too, that I didn't need to be in control of everything, but I needed to be an orchestrator to make sure that it was expanding in the way I wanted it to.
And how was that transition going from artist, the being the product, to now all of a sudden being an actual business owner and orchestrator?
Yeah, it went from it kinda goes back to, like, passion, "Oh, I'm the singer and songwriter, and I'm really good at it, so let's, like, practice that," right? "Ooh, I gotta look at this as a business, and I'm a brand now, and so I gotta take that passion, and now I gotta make this a brand, and who is Jocelyn Garrett, and who is that as a performer, and what does that brand look like?" And then kind of then compartmentalizing into, okay, now how are we gonna make this where an audience will come to see performances so we can monetize this more and keep expanding? So I think it was learning how to compartmentalize a lot of these different things, just like in business today, right? Finance, the growth and capacity side of things. So just learning that and really honing in at a young age, but also allowing advice. I totally took in criticism or advice, from people that have lived it or in the industry, but also on the flip side, people that weren't doing what I was doing, not taking their advice and understanding, like, if you're not living and breathing and doing the day to day of what I'm doing, then I can't really take your advice. But the people that were 100% listened. I think that's important.
For sure. And this is a good follow up question to this because I've been thinking a lot about this lately. How important is it to build a brand today? And the second half of that question is, when you're building a brand, what do you need to think about? What goes into a brand?
That's a really good question, Alex. Building a brand today, I think, is actually easier. And how I say this is we have the technology to help create the marketing side of it quicker, faster, relevant. So I think that's probably the shortest answer and easiest answer to that. I think that's today easier than it was at least a decade ago, right? You're not knocking on everyone's door and trying to say, "Hey, I'm, Jocelyn Garrett and here's my album." And it's different, right? We have AI, we have other tools, which I know we'll probably get to on AI and how that relates. I think when it came to the brand, you really have to understand your value prop. And for me, it was I wanted to impact people through my words and my music, and I wanted that to be a ripple effect in a positive way. And I was going to stick to that character, that value, that is my brand. So anything that I did, I lived, breathed, and whoever I met acted in that way. So that's kind of the answer in the most honest and easy way.
I like it. So it's making sure that you have a consistent message and that those that you associate yourself with and how you present yourself is consistent with what you're saying. So it's matching your actions with your words publicly so that a lot of people see you being consistent.
Absolutely. And I think that's in everyday life too. But when you are a brand, such as yourself doing this, right? What intrigues someone to want to listen to Alex in this podcast, right? And it's probably a lot of those things that you value and what impact you want to make. So when you own in on that, the marketing side of it almost becomes easy in that way.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, I've been thinking about this and reflecting on building our brand, and it's changed. Like it's changed a lot from maybe even just a year ago to today, where maybe a year ago we weren't as clear, but more recently we've been becoming very laser focused on what it is that we want to be known for and being very visible and vocal. And I think you're right. I mean, it's never been it's never been easier to than and then today than to get your voice out there. But I think people underestimate how much effort it actually takes to get your voice heard over all the noise that people see. Because there's so much AI slop going around everywhere on social media, very little effort, but there's so much volume of it that it's hard to make sure that your message is getting seen by your people. So it's super relevant, super relevant. So great stuff talking about music. Now I want to transition to your next part of your career, so to speak, right? You spent a lot of time in medical sales as a professional there. Talk to us a little bit about that bridge from music to medical sales professional.
Yeah. So it was actually my second job out of college. Oh my gosh, it makes me feel old. I was working at Stericycle at the time, and Stericycle is a biomedical waste company. I was in the product segment, so I was the person that was selling. They consider sharps containers. So if you're ever in a doctor's office and you see, putting the needles in this wall, like to dispose of them, they were more than likely something that I sold to either hospitals, healthcare industries, you name it. It was pretty relevant at the time. So I had to call on large national hospitals, and it wasn't just the sharps container itself. I mean, it could have been gloves, needles, so products of healthcare and medical sales. The interesting story that I know we didn't actually discuss on was I think the same thing translate, right? Whoever you meet, you have to make an impression and it has to be one where you need to build rapport very, very quickly because someone may like you, but that doesn't mean that someone that likes you may buy from you, right? So it comes back to building the rapport within the first 30 seconds and then your value statement, right? So I did that in medical sales. The thing that was actually my favorite part was during that time in medical sales, we acquired a company called Shred It. Are you familiar with Shred It? Have you seen the trucks?
No, tell me.
There's like a funny meme, so you're gonna have to look this up. Maybe you can edit it and put it in there, but there's a guy that's like, "Shred it, bro." And so it's these trucks and, any papers that needed to be disposed of so that there weren't records, they weren't in violation of HIPAA compliance. We had to go and make sure that we were getting rid of all those in a compliant way. So we acquired this company, and I ended up raising my hand and taking the forefront of leading the charge on this new acquisition. And so that taught me a lot also on the business side of acquiring companies and how that looks as far as an operational standpoint and how leadership skills and when you're very siloed within different companies, how to make sure the communication is there and making sure that from top down and bottom up, there's not a bottleneck within some of the things that you share with executives or leadership teams. So I ended up staying in Shredded and moved up the chain of ladder on that. And this was all while I was still doing music on the back, like at night. I didn't sleep for a very long time, if I'm being honest. Yes. I was working at corporate while singing and songwriting, and I was very blessed. The studio is in Northbrook, which at the time I lived close to, and that's where Stericycle was located. So just worked out.
Wow. So talk to me about some of this journey because yeah, you hadn't shared this before. You're holding back on me, but this is super interesting. So what were some of the lessons that you had to learn here on communication, and how did you create a structure that had communication that flowed from you to corporate?
Yeah, failing a lot. Being able to sync and fail and do it fast and then learn how to recover. And when I say that, I mean, I was for probably a good year, I was failing and having to figure out, okay, what works, what doesn't work. How are we going to, again, productize and monetize this into healthcare systems because we acquired this company. And I just was super determined to do that. To answer your question, as far as the creating the processes, it was like a learning from failing. And then once you see success, you rinse and repeat. And then once you're able to rinse, repeat, you're able to duplicate yourself. Once you're able to duplicate yourself, you're adding teammates, and then the sales grows, right? Kind of full circle of why I'm with Propel today. And so that's what I learned as far as creating the processes. If you can duplicate success and you can have it written down within all aspects of a business, you can go to leadership and showcase, here are the numbers, here's how we got there, and now let's rinse and repeat this and duplicate it. And that's how we were able to grow pretty rapidly after the year failing.
But I want to know about this year of failing because I feel like there's a lot more nuggets in there that because
Sure.
you learn so much through your failure than you when you do with success, I think. And because most of my personal learning has been through when I failed gloriously. And it's like, oh yeah, that did not work. Talk to me through your iteration process of where did you start?
Mm.
Like where was like when you took over this thing, what were some of those first actions that you were taking that you had to learn quickly on the fly?
I called everyone that I was a part to in my latest position on the product side of medical sales. I called all the hospitals and owners that I worked with and had great relationships and asked them if this would be important. And I told them about Shredded and what we were doing, and I asked them what were the three important things why they would want this a part of their healthcare system. And a lot of them said at the time, obviously records and people's information. So that was important. So I'm like, got it. So being compliant and making sure that people's information wasn't out there. God forbid it was thrown out by maybe a secretary and someone got a hold of it and it's a whole lawsuit. So it became more of mitigating risk. And that was going to be the value proposition. So I called people that I knew I had good relationships. Now, that was one testing theory. The other was just picking up the phone and cold calling. I don't know if you've ever done that back in the day, but I mean, it had to have been hundreds and hundreds of just cold calling, and then you kind of understand the common denominator of from your cold calls who was very intrigued by it and who wasn't. And at the time, it was a lot of people outside of healthcare at that point that was interested as well, like tech companies that were starting up and they didn't want, information. And then it kind of came, okay, mitigating risk was important. Compliance was very important on the healthcare side. But then it became, you would hear stories of lawsuits for these giant companies for information from employees or not. And so it was easy to then kind of go up the ladder and kind of present once, we had a good productized and yeah, just a good product and a good service for then going to enterprise companies and going there. But again, I had to do kind of two test subjects, right? Hearing why it would be worth like someone would want this service and why it'd be beneficial. And it almost became an insurance policy for these businesses. So it's like a peace of mind.
I love that because I mean, I love how you're describing you go out there and you talk to customers first. So you understand how to position the thing that you do. Because when you go to somebody, I'm sure nobody want to say, yeah, I want you to shred my documents.
Yeah. Oh, I made some calls and that did happen. Who knows? They're like, we have one fax. What do you mean? I'm like, oh,
But I love how you describe it as talking to customers to understand how they relate to the thing that you are selling. And then so you put it in the context of how it makes sense to them and what, like you're describing, what's the value proposition that you are bringing to them in terms of actual value to them, in terms in the same vocabulary that they use themselves. I think that itself is such a gold nugget. And I say that's awesome. Like super awesome to share that level of wisdom from tried and true. Like this is what you actually did. Super awesome, super fascinating there. So let's keep going and talk about this just a little bit more if you allow me to.
yeah.
What were some of those other lessons from a team's perspective? You talked about cold calling. Yeah, you hit the beat. You got all this data, but then when you had the processes and you're starting to try to duplicate yourself by bringing in more team members, talk to us about some of those friction points that you had there because this is a really big topic, right? This is something that people tell me all the time is they have such a hard time finding somebody that can come in and do a job, right? Finding the right labor force. Maybe shed some light on how you approached that part of this building phase of this company that you were in charge of.
Yeah, that's a great question. I had to learn really quick that everyone is not motivated the same way I am. So, with that being said, there's different discipline, just people have different disciplines, right? So I had to learn, I'll just use an example, a fake name. Like Joe was motivated by money, while let's just say Max was motivated by recognition. So we, I had to learn how to make sure that their motivation was a part of the process for them, although they had the same goals. With that being said, then you can kind of create markers and milestones, and they're completely separate roadmaps that you create with them. These milestones or benchmarks, whatever you want to call them. For Joe, if he wants to make X amount a year, we would say, okay, then you need to make this amount a month, which means you need to sell this many, contracts, and this is how many people you need to talk to. You just like break it down, right? And then for Max, he wanted to be recognized and be a top player. I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean to you? And what does that look like? And for him, being a top player was I want to be employee of the month. And I'm like, well, by being employee of the month, you got to do, five different core things, but you still got to be hitting your numbers. So we worked a different way backwards where, okay, you need to focus on selling contracts in this way that relates to you, and that's going to hit this core value of having integrity when you sell, and that's a core value. So you just break them down and create different roadmaps based on individual people. I will say too, it made me realize really quick that I did not want to be chain of commands. And when I say that, I did not want to move higher than that because there was so much for me personally. I became emotionally attached to each individual person. Just like music, I'm emotionally attached to everything I write. And when I put it out there, I mean, that's me, my life story, my personal experiences. So it also taught me that I could never or would not want to. Could I be move up the chain a lot? Sure. But would I want to? No, I actually did not from learning that experience. I got too emotionally invested. And although they had great success and I'd have to look at the stats, but at the time, Shreddit did increase by, I think it was like 201% in revenue in that second year. And we did bring on, I want to say about 21 new reps. So it was a big taking, it was a big task. I learned a lot, but I also learned a lot about energy and where you want to attribute energy and not burnout.
Wow. That's awesome.
So
Oh,
there's a lot of talking.
that no, that was that's I mean, all of this is gold for sure. And this is something, so I was just actually today, I'm sitting down, I'm writing in my book my chapter on hiring processes from that correlate from merchant marine to the private sector. And this is something that is super important. And you just touched on it perfectly, which is getting emotionally attached to people. And I think that it's not wrong to get invested in people and you should be invested in your employees. But I think the timing and when people get invested in somebody maybe is too soon, right? There's that, especially in that first 90-day period window is where I've seen like you have to be able to evaluate their work, right? And you got to be able to think really critical of them for especially when they first come on board. Typically the first 2 weeks, right, as are the honeymoon phase. So you're like everybody's putting in their best effort in the first 2 weeks because they're all excited to be there. And then they start to settle into a position and then they're like, okay, now this is actually their real baseline. This is what they're going to give you on a regular basis. And that's where you have to kind of really understand, is this a good fit or not a good fit? Curious to know, did you see something similar, a similar pattern? Like, did you see people give maybe a little bit more effort in those first few weeks of employment and then see maybe a drop in performance? Or were you seeing a consistency and a building of skills in the relationship over time?
It's a great question, Alex. If I look back, the people that I think and success is measured differently, right? So, like, I'll just use Max. Success was not money driven, right? It was recognition and awareness and doing a great job for his job. He was successful and stayed in that role like 6 years, but he was super happy and successful because he was recognized for being the top notch guy at that time, right? Joe, on the other hand, moved up the chain because he wanted more money, and that was more of the motivation, right? So I think when I look at patterns, I think the consistency of understanding what motivates people and then their actions, kind of how you described it, that discipline, right? I have this quote. I don't know who said this, but I heard it and it stuck with me and it stuck with me for life. Discipline is freedom. And so the people that were extremely disciplined and consistent were successful. Everyone's success looked different. But the people that were kind of wishy-washy or couldn't give me, like, why they wanted to be there, I guess, they didn't have a set goal for themselves on an individual. Like, sure, I wanna make money and I wanna do this, but didn't know, for themselves what they wanted. Those people typically, didn't stick along.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think what you just described, like co-creating a roadmap, I think is super important. And what I was writing down this morning as I was jotting down my thoughts is making sure that at least you have the first 90 days mapped for them. Like these are the milestones in the first 90 days to show that you belong here, right? That you belong in this company, you have a seat at the table because you showed that you have the XYZ accomplishments. But I think you take it a next step further, which is you have a career map. And I think that's super important is to know is
Love
that
that.
for people to understand that this is not just we're going to day in day out, but there's a pathway here for you and it matches what you want, going back to exactly like the value proposition to your customers. You went out and you asked them, what do you want to see from us? We have this thing, but how does it make sense to you? And I think that same selling, you're still selling somebody, but you're selling an employee versus selling a customer. You're selling them on what this is who we are as a company. What makes sense for you? How do you see the value that we can bring to you because you're going to bring the company value performing this defined role. So I think that's super smart and just makes a big difference. And you saw that huge benefit with over 200% revenue increase over a 12-month period. I mean, that's huge. So
Yeah, and I do wanna add this because I think this is really important, and I think anyone listening, either can relate or if they're in this phase of, growing a team, what's important. I'm gonna say energy is really important because you wanna make sure that the energy that you're giving is being received. For example, I'm not gonna be able to be 100% all the time for all the reps at the time, right? But if I'm seeing someone working extremely hard and giving me 100%, I wanted to match that person's energy when we had our time together. So, really understanding where your energy level is at and where they are. You'll also probably find people that are slacking. Like, what are they really doing? And is their energy really into this? Give less back. That they should not be giving you should not be giving 100%. This is my personal opinion from experience. 100% of your energy to someone that isn't giving it back, right? So there's definitely I believe, consistent measurable frequency of energy that you want to give someone. And the people that you really are on the same wavelength as far as energy, I see skyrocket. I really do.
yeah, no, you definitely get more out of them and you get more out of yourself because you're excited to work with somebody like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So my experience on the ship, right? When the guy came on the ship, had the reputation, you already knew, oh, this is not going to go well. I'm going to be stuck with this jerk for the next 90 days. I'm just going to have to muscle through it. I'm going to try to avoid him in the hallway. I'm not going to talk to him. We're just going to do what I need to do and get out, and that's it. I can tell you those days were so tense. Like they were so tense to work on that ship because those were the days that you feel like you're walking on eggshells. So like trying to avoid people. You got all this like politics going on everywhere, like who talks to who in the office. You got to be careful what you say to different people. And it's like when you're saying energy and protect your energy, that those days are so draining, right?
Mm.
They're mentally, and the mental exhaustion creates physical exhaustion. You're just like, man, I'm just wiped trying to navigate the politics of this whole thing going on right now. So I want to ask you, since we're talking about energy, how important is it to get rid of people that are causing that level of stress, right? It may not be they may even be top players, right? They may even be top salespeople, but how important is it to protect the energy of the team itself?
So the quick answer is having a conversation. Once you realize that, you can see it coming a mile away. You have a conversation one on one with them and you establish from the rip, this is the expectations and this is but having a conversation too with them so they can express, why they may be acting this way. Sometimes it could be personal and you may never know. Sometimes it could be them, going through whatever the case may be. So that's setting the expectation and having that I always use the term from the rip. That's something I said in Ohio when I grew up there. That's first and foremost. I will say something that I was really lucky because Stericycle was such a large brand with other avenues. If someone wasn't performing, although I knew that they were a great performer and a high performer, they just might not be in the right place to be so. I would also have the conversation of, what interests you, and there could be other opportunities within the company that you could be better at. So it gave them other avenues of, to your point, a more of a career path if they weren't being successful within the segment that I was in, but they found success elsewhere because it was just a better fit for them. And I think that's important to understand too.
Yeah. How do you know this may be a little harder to answer, but I'm going to ask it.
Sure.
How do you know when to fire somebody? Like, how do you know when you're just like, nope, this is not working out and you need to go?
I think it's a number of conversations. I'm a big believer in honesty. I want you to be honest with me and I will be honest with you. I'm an expectation setter. I will set the expectation. I want you to set expectations for me. At the end of the day, we have the same job and it's to get it done. And it's to, whether it's amount of contracts, bring a certain amount of revenue, monthly recurring revenue, and AR, whatever the case may be at the time. It's a one team, one goal effort. And that's how I always looked at it. So it wasn't just, hey, you're gone. It was a number of conversations. And at that point, they might have been burnt out and the writing was on the wall. And it was kind of like, yeah, this isn't for me. Or it was, I still really believe in this company and what we stand for. And I still see myself here. I just think I might be a better fit somewhere else. So three things: expectation, one team, one goal, and having more than one conversation to make sure that they're still doing what we got to do.
Yep. It's hard. It's never easy to get rid of somebody.
I find the most uncomfortable conversations are the one that become the most valiant. And when I say that, when you have uncomfortable conversations, people grow from them. At least that's my experience. And maybe just in life, like when you're living in you can't grow. I know this is a saying, but nothing ever grows from staying stagnant and comfortable, right? So I found that the most uncomfortable conversations were actually the ones that I learned a lot and the most from, but it also benefited others too, because they may have not known something if they didn't have a conversation or we didn't have the uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And you're right. You don't grow through comfort. You grow through challenge. And it's hard to have those conversations. And a lot of people that I've talked to, they struggle having those conversations soon enough. Like they prolong having the conversation. I think prolonging it just makes it worse. Because eventually, typical cycle is you just kind of you're talking, but you're venting to somebody else over here on the side. Oh, they didn't do this and they didn't do that. And then all of a sudden it just builds and builds and builds over months, possibly even years. And then eventually you just blow a gasket at them. And now you've turned a bad situation worse because you weren't level headed enough to have that honest conversation. It's tough. It's tough, but having those conversations sooner, I think also helps where you see it, you see the pattern, you recognize it, and you just get in front of it as fast as you can with those corrective actions. So yeah, right there with you. And what were some of the most the proudest moments that you had leading this company? Like what were some of those like major victory marks if you're like, yeah, that was solid.
Oh, there's a couple. The most, oh, I'll have to say,
You can have more than one if there's like a couple of them, but
I'm not trying to like sit on
you're
your.
allowed to have more than one victory.
I'll say one, I guess, personal, which was cool, and then one that was very, very cool, career driven. The career one, I'll go. I ended up creating a binder at the time, which came up with the processes of how we were moving forward with Shreddit, how we were selling it into Stericycle at other times, how we would sell Shreddit into the different branches of Stericycle. It was a binder where they could just go to, and kind of all the answers are there from all the learnings. And so that ended up being sent to every individual within the company from a binder that I created. And with that, the success of interselling between Shreddit and all the other brands. So with that, that was a big tribute that they gave to me and was a big milestone on being like top performer and leader within the company during that time. That was a huge milestone. But just like songwriting, I have to think about it that way. Like I love songwriting and writing things out and giving it, and it has impact and value. So there, it's kind of like very relatable to me. So I would say that, and then being named top leader. I don't even know what year it was to go back. It's like crazy. I can't believe how fast time flies. On the personal side, I got promoted, and my brother just got into Stericycle at the time, like brand new. And so they announced they take everyone, on the floor, and there's probably like, oh gosh, maybe 150 salespeople, 100 leaders, so 200 people, and we're meeting in the forum, and they promoted me, and my brother, is new, and he hears like Jocelyn Garrett's getting promoted, and you just hear my brother like, "Yeah, that's my sister." So for me, that's like the personal, emotional side where I'm like, "Oh, that was super cool that my brother got to witness like hard work," and yeah, that was really cool.
I love that. I love that. And proud moments. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to kind of maybe let's change the subject just a little bit now and go to your work with Propel, and then after Propel, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about AI. Because there's a lot of implications there in business. But at Propel, how did you go from medical sales and leading Shredded to now you're at Propel, right? And you're helping small business owners with with the system. But talk to us about the work you're doing there and why you feel like this is both a passion and a needed service.
Sure. So after my time at Stericycle, I moved into two other Fortune 500 companies, Career Builder, and then Sherm was right before Propel. And Sherm, I was director of partnerships on the enterprise solution side. And so with I had to add that as preface is I ended up meeting the co-founders of Cultivate Advisors. Cultivate Advisors are, Dan and Casey started about 13 years ago and they scaled it to 60 advisors and $30 million in revenue. And the reason being that they hired people that owned and exited businesses. And it really was intriguing to me. And they worked with small business owners and entrepreneurs and helped them scale and grow based on enterprise value and the health of their business. And these are things that I didn't do in my own business at the time, right? Because I was wearing every hat and I didn't focus on, you know, of the health of my business and what my enterprise value could be once sold based on industry and that high and low multiple. So it was just a different way of thinking and I totally related. So wasn't even actually looking and ran into them, had a conversation and they told me that they created a software in-house, operator built. A lot of their advisors said we're sick of working on, Google Sheets and we need somewhere to put everything. And there's so much software out there. I think, EOS is great, but the 90.0, it just didn't work in our in the Cultivate Advisors atmosphere of, it's teaching. EOS is great at teaching coaches to be great coaches or leaders, great leaders, but not executing or creating like strategic planning, right? Value Builder, it's great with marketing and they have great assessments that help evaluate, core values and where they want to go. But it didn't then establish roadmaps or initiatives or tasks that need to be done to making sure that these core values or assessments were really taking place. So they created their own tech stack. And so to sum it up, Propel is really an operational management platform for all small business owners. At this point, I think anyone truly could use it. That does three things: visibility into their entire portfolio, drives performance, and is just simple. It's an all in one tech stack. And so, having my background and all the different ventures, it just became full circle where I became, the director of partnerships for this. And I'm going out there and I'm having conversations with small business owners. And when I say small business owners, it could be anyone that's a startup to, they hit that 1 million and they're ready to like have maybe a sales team and they're starting to grow. It's less and they're stuck in the day to day and, they're not working. There's no freedom within the business. Right. And so I get to have these conversations and, give them Propel, which is just going to make their life easier. It's going to make them have complete visibility on their business. And it's leading with EV, which I think is extremely important. I think whether you're planning on exiting or not, I think it's extremely important to always be thinking that way, or at least planning your business around it, because you never know what can happen. And if you don't think that way, unfortunately, there's times where, I'll be the first to say I burnt out and, exited it. I've seen businesses fold, by unfortunately like death or something tragic. So my purpose is to go out there, give them the tech stack and make sure that they're running efficiently on this operating platform.
Yeah, no, I think that's powerful, and it message definitely resonates. There's so many businesses, and actually, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but it's only like 4% of businesses actually crack $1 million of sales in the United States. It's ridiculously low for the amount of businesses that actually make it over that $1 million mark. But doesn't mean it's a bad business. It just means that they're in the normal, right? That it's not normal to make it over the million. And so by you helping people go get from startup to passing that $1 million mark as efficiently as possible, you're helping people achieve something that's extraordinary. So I think that that's
Absolutely.
it's super awesome to see investment into that arena. And this leads to a really great question because how do we see now you say Propel has a tech stack, right? And tech stack is great, but what is Propel seeing from a AI first initiative that is going to change the game for businesses?
Yeah. So I'll say what Propel does now and where I think AI is going and how I think and how we're using it today because we see the future long term, right? So AI is going to be prevalent where if you're not using it in your business, unfortunately, a lot of businesses are going to fold, especially if you're not profitable. There's just no way you can catch up. We have AI within Propel that is a bot that allows help and structure when you put in a question. And inside Propel, like we strategic plan, we have roadmaps, we have initiatives, we have tasks. And it's funny that I'm saying this out loud. And I actually haven't even like had the light bulb moment, but everything inside this platform, Propel, is everything I did throughout my career, right? Like the planning, the roadmaps with people, creating initiatives and benchmarks and monitoring it. But now it's just at such a high level for these people that are in these small businesses. And you're dead on with the statistic. I don't know if you follow Ibis World, but in the last year, the average small business owner is 1.4 firm, which means an owner and maybe a VA. So
No.
I would not doubt that that 4% is pretty dead on. And so we need to lift the industry now because AI is coming. We need to lift the industry. We need to help these businesses grow, scale, give them the tools. And that's what I do. Give them the tools to do this. Now they do need to do it themselves, right? You got to hit the ceiling and you got to go through it, but you have the tech stack to do that and to run fast because it's coming. Now, I think it's gonna be beneficial for those that use AI, but those that it's harder to change behavior than create it. So create the behavior using it now to the best of your ability because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I wrote a series of articles on this last week on LinkedIn, and it was I think my prediction is that things are happening so fast that in 2 years from now, businesses that haven't adopted an AI strategy are going to be suffering big time. I think it's 2 years. I don't think we have. I think in 5 years, businesses that haven't adopted an AI strategy are going to be out of business. The vast majority of them, and
Unfortunately,
it's because how fast the technology is progressing. And if like we think about it, AI will never be worse than it is today, and it's getting better exponentially. It's just looking at it, holy smokes, this
yeah.
is fast. It's changing the landscape of business almost overnight. And there was an interesting study. I'm not who did the study is escaping me, but there was a study that just came out recently that efficiency gains haven't showed up yet. Over the last year, AI has not improved efficiency in business almost at all. I think it was only like 1 to 2% efficiency gained. But if you look back when the computer came into being into the business world, it took 10 years from the 1980s to the mid 90s, and it was the same pattern. There was almost no efficiency gained over a 10-year period, even though computers were becoming more prevalent. And then at the 10-year mark, it was like a switch went on, and it was you either were using computers or you did not, and you were out. Like it was almost that fast in that year 10. And I think we've already had AI for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years now, where I don't think it's going to take 10 years. I think it's going to be, that's why I'm saying a 2 to 5 year time horizon is probably going to be around the time people are going to need to understand AI and how it facilitates business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's where it comes full circle and into what I do and why my purpose, right, is to still help these entrepreneurs and small businesses and take action now and help them grow and scale. But I also want to add to the music industry has changed with AI tremendously. I mean, I have Suno as an app, and I'm not even saying that as a partnership that I have with them, and I'm giving them free advertising right now, but I still songwrite and create beats on the side that I still will send out to BMI, and if people wanna buy them, like, that's another part that I'm still into with, the music business, and, I mean, AI has just come extremely, extremely far in the music. You can literally type out exactly, what instruments you want and what genre you want it to fall in, to what harmony, to what, notes that you want to, and then you add, your lyrics in there, and it'll create a song within 2 minutes for you, and then you can play around with it. I mean, when I was working in a studio, it could take me 3 months to finish one song, or it could take me 3 hours, right? And so it's come such a long and far way, even in the music industry alone. So, little side note.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It's disrupting so many different things and it's just making things go faster. And this is one of the things I'm talking about in my book is that you can't, even though the things go faster with AI. So just think AI, should just equate it to moving faster. But if your system is broken, it's just going to move your broken system faster and you're going to fail faster. So it's like you're not going to actually gain any ground if you don't start with the systems. And that's why I think what you do and what we talk about is so important because you have to always have the right business fundamentals. Like the fundamentals of business don't change. AI is not changing the way business works, it's changing how fast it works. So I think that understanding how to put the right pieces together and how to leverage the right systems and spending time writing those binders and those SOPs and those documented processes, it's like that's still fundamental, right? To any business. You still got to have repeatable results. And AI just helps it move faster.
And to your point too, I mean, you nailed it on the head, right? The right processes. Once you set that into place, and the goal that I do at Propel is it's helping you create that structure, that strategic planning, right? You're creating those roadmaps. Again, visibility, performance, and simplicity. And that using AI, that's going to do that faster for you, which is going to help you grow faster, which is going to help you scale faster. So you totally nailed it on the head with that.
Yeah, perfect. What are some of the things that you are seeing? Doesn't have to be AI, but it could be. But what are some of the things that you are seeing right now that business owners are telling you that they're struggling with? What are some of those hot buttons right now that business owners are struggling with?
Adoption. I think it comes down to, I'll say towards AI or towards using it, adoption. And if they can't adopt it, they can't teach someone else to. So they're just stuck in their ways, or just old behavior, right? Isn't wrong or right, but it's not going to move you faster, to your point. The second, which is not including AI, that I hear a lot of is really coming down to market spend, where I'll talk to someone. Now, this is in the threshold of small business owners that I'm currently working with or talking to on the forefront. They'll spend X amount on marketing dollars and not see a return. And that's really hard to hear because that could have been their savings. It could have been, whatever the case may be. And they're not getting a return out of that. We got to open the hood and understand why. What I think is extremely important, and I mean, something that Propel has is like this health and value assessment where you take it and it populates a 25-page curated report where it shows you every aspect of the health of your business and what it's worth today. And if you just fix the health and not spent a dollar down on it, what it would be worth on EV and how many years later, and you just work towards that plan. That hurts my heart when I hear how much money people are spending to think they're going to gain clients or gain sales from it, right? And that's just not the case. It looks good and it's great, but sometimes it's not giving them a return they need for their business to keep running.
Yeah, for sure. Marketing can be a black box that, or a black hole that you just keep throwing money into, hoping that something eventually is going to come back. And I think so many people get that wrong. And not because that they're not capable. I don't think that they understand marketing well enough and they think that they're just going to hire an agency or hire somebody out there that is good on posting and that means that they're good at marketing. I've spent the last couple of years studying marketing and I can tell you like after 2 years of in-depth study, marketing is way deeper than just posting, way deeper than just posting. I'll ask you your thoughts because here this is because this is the really applicable. We've been talking this entire time. What are some of those major points that you wish more people understood about marketing fundamentally?
Mm. Spending a lot on social media isn't necessarily going to give you a return. It's just going to make it to me. And I did this with my music and my brand. So I think there's some great drivers from it, but I don't think that that's where you should be spending your time and your efforts. I think it goes a long way as far as dividing that growth and capacity with your financials, right? You want to have the dollar amount for the marketing and targeting towards your brand audience. So, really identifying who your audience is, your ICP, understanding who you're going after, and making sure that you're targeting that audience to engage with. And that could look different for someone that's starting up in tech or starting up an advisory firm, consulting firm, whatever the case may be, whatever business they're starting up, that's going to look different for everyone, right? But blasting it, everyone's blasting on social media. So that doesn't make you different. So it's going to be harder to attract. So really defining your target audience and then finding the right avenue of where do you get the highest return based on that. So that would be my advice on that. The other is don't spend all your capital on marketing, right? Because you still have the capacity side. You're still going to need time for those SOPs and the financial side that you need to work on and the analytical side, right? So I would say just finances are the fuel, right? You need to know where you're at and where you need to be, but really being smart and creating roadmaps based on where you want to be next 3, 5 years out, what that looks as enterprise value, what it looks like today with revenue and profit, and then taking the market spend. I mean, I've seen people not spend a dime on marketing and have a crazy return. And I'll give you a good example of this one. I had, who was it? I want to say a restoration company. And God forbid something horrible happened. They, targeted different humanitarian projects and Red Cross and, you know, basically just documented everything and made a short reel on YouTube that was completely free. But so many people related to it because they targeted the people that they were helping and impacting and just was more valuable and more beneficial for those people, and they didn't spend a dime on it. So yeah, that was an interesting case study, but that'd be my 2 cents.
I agree. We've been doing basically entirely organic for the last few months, 100% organic, and we've seen our audience base grow consistently with only just posting organically. And when you do it organically too, I feel like you get a better feedback loop of what's actually working, what messaging is actually resonating with your ICP or internal client profile, right? Customer profile. So I'm a big believer right now in organic. Like understand what the market is telling you with organic reach. And that way you can understand how to communicate better and really double down on if you find that good piece of content that resonates strongly with your audience, turn that piece of content into a paid advertisement and make it go farther with the dollars. And that's how you maximize a lot of that advertising is find out what already works and then just make it go louder. From a strategy perspective, I think that is way more sound than just throwing money into, well, let's just make a generic ad and throw it out there. And because it went far, so many people saw it, like we had a result. So yeah, no, right there with you. Right there with you on that. Kind of like moving this now to kind of a little bit more of a personal question about living intentionally. So you've had a very intentional career and you music, you're very passionate about everything you do, about music, about helping business owners. Being entrepreneurship is very big. I could tell this subject totally moves you. And I want to ask you, how do you translate that into now your home life, like your personal life? What does living intentionally mean to you?
Oh my god, that is such a good question. Living intentionally is this goes back to the energy thing. So for me personally, I actually met my fiance being very intentional because when I made this move towards Propel, just starting off, I ran into him and he actually worked at Stericycle when I worked at Stericycle at the time. And so to kind of answer your question in this way, when you're intentional with who you are, and I told you this earlier, I knew who I was, and you're very grateful for what you have and you live and breathe in a lack of abundance and not a state of lack. I should say state of abundance. And you keep putting that out there, right? And then your energy's really matching it. When you do that, things that you intend for yourself, at least I find I start attracting. Once you start notice that you can attract the life that you want to build and live and thrive, you start doing it more, right? It becomes practice. So, if my piece of advice is on a personal level, be very grateful for the things that you have because there's so many people that may not have what you have. And so, don't take that lightly. That's my first take. The second take would be living in a state of abundance mentally versus lack. Because in a state of abundance, it's a blissful way of living and you're more open-minded to everything that's coming your way and versus lack where I got to get this done or I didn't hit a number and all that. Put that noise aside. That doesn't do you anything but probably stress you out and be overwhelmed. I mean, I've been there, trust me. That would probably be my way of living intentional. Just being a good person to everyone you talk to. I know that sounds so cheesy, but being authentic and genuine. I mean, I reached out to you just because you someone and I wanted to reach out. And I'm like, I think we may be doing the same thing or serving the same people, but in a different light. I want to get to know Alex and look how this is, unfolded, right? That is so important. I think that's so important. So be authentic and genuine and yeah, live your truth. That's what I would say. It was so me.
Oh, 100%. Because I mean, everybody's got different versions of success, and I think that's super important. Is to define success for you personally, and what does that mean? Everybody says I want to be successful, but nobody really takes the time to determine what that means. It's like,
Mm,
well, do I want to be Dwayne the Rock Johnson? Is that success? Am I only going to be happy when I'm worth $1 billion? Or, I look at it as, my bank account, I would say, is not the measure of my success for sure, because I'm definitely richer than some and I'm poorer than others. Like it's just that's just how it works in this world. You're maybe if money is the only measure of success, you're going to miss it. I think I am probably the most blessed person on the planet because I have a wonderful wife. We've been married for 15 years coming up and very, very soon. And I've got 5 amazing kids and we get to travel the country. Like I can't think of any other guy that's as blessed as I am, for
yeah,
sure.
that's so
It's like,
cool.
it's like I've already won. Like I don't even
Yeah,
know.
everything's cherry on top for you.
I'm already dancing here. At this point, it's what do I want to give back to the world and to society? This is where I feel like you and I resonate on on the mission, right? The mission is to help entrepreneurs because this is a really important segment that we need to make sure stays in our country, in the United States in particular, but across the world, because entrepreneurs create economies. Entrepreneurs create stability for nations. Entrepreneurs are creatives in society, and it's so hard. And and if we can help make it even 1% better, I want to show up for that. And I know you feel the same way too, because we've had these conversations. We're talking about what moves us. I mean, on and off the camera now. I like to have relationships with people that resonate with the same mission. I think that's something that you and I are on the same wavelength on.
Yeah, I think if I'm putting a tangible, I guess, intention to what I'm doing now on the work front, it would be I would love to impact 200 small businesses this year, and then another 100 in 2027. And so, in a tangible number, that would be um, my impact that I'd like to do and my intention.
I love it, and we can start right here by pushing this
Yeah.
pushing this episode and pushing it out there so that people can hear all the awesome things that you have said on this episode. I want to give you, as we're kind of wrapping up the segment, I want to give you one last thought. If you had to boil everything down into maybe 1 to 3, I'll give you most 3, no more than 3, but 1 to 3 first principles on business or ownership or living an intentional life, what would it be? What would be your advice to the next generation of entrepreneurs?
Discipline is freedom. I'm going to use that same quote.
Love it.
Know what you want to do. Discipline is freedom. Shut out all the noise. If you know who you are, you know what you want. Discipline yourself to get it done and shut out all the outside noise.
I love it. I love it. That's probably going to be the title of this episode is Discipline is Freedom. That's what probably is going to go on there. This episode is now branded Discipline is Freedom. I love it. I
I
love it.
love that. That's perfect.
So Jocelyn, tell everybody where the people can find you. How can they reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn if you choose, Jocelyn Garrett. You can find me on Instagram at Jocelyn M. Garrett. You can go to my website, jocelyngarrett.com, YouTube there, Spotify, iTunes, all that. But yeah, Alex, thank you so much for having me. This
Oh,
has
this has
been
been
great.
awesome. Yeah, no, for sure. This has been a great episode. I've gotten a lot of value from it. I know, and I love this conversation. I think it's really needed. And all your links will be in the description below. So if you're looking to connect with Jocelyn, they're down below. Go check them out. Get connected with Jocelyn. She's a fantastic human being, worth connecting to. And with that, have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks.